You're all good.
Hi, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Love Your Work. I'm Whitney Wiley, and thank you for being here today. I have with me Tricia Parido, who is going to talk about the work that she does, the work that she loves as a recovery specialist. And we're going to talk about some of the lessons that Tricia has learned on her journey. So, Tricia, how are you?
Oh my gosh, it's a spectacular day. My feelings are any day you wake up without a chalk line around your body is just amazing.
I agree. I agree. I love, we were talking before we started recording, and I love your energy. And I know part of that probably has to do with the fact that you live on the central coast of California, right?
That doesn't hurt for sure. For
It's
sure.
very beautiful through there. So, tell us what a recovery specialist and a little bit about your work.
So, I really consider myself, a recovery lifestyle enthusiast. Sure, I have 13 credentials that could go behind my name, but you know what? I've walked the journey. mm, anyway, it's a real long story. It's a good over 30-year story. But so I'm a recovery lifestyle enthusiast. I am absolutely 100% a very credentialed coach. Um, but I'm also, very passionate about speaking to others about my very favorite niche, if you will, or population. And there's two. And that are those individuals that are transitioning from treatment into back into life, right? So that's for that now what's next treatment transition to life period, which is considered an assertive continuum of care that in my personal and professional experience I can state is very lacking
Mm,
in our standard protocols. Our standard protocols are very necessary. They have purpose. They meet their criteria. But when we're talking about that after piece, there's a really it's a journey,
yeah.
right? And so I mean, post acute withdrawal lasts for 2 years, but we're sending people home with just social support of AANA and weekly therapy, for those that decide to engage in those things. But for those people that go home and don't even rely on social supports, you know, they're going back to their lives, to the same house, the same spouse, the same kids, the same bills, the same job, the same environment, the same community, the same social circles, everything that they were previously not functioning in. And we have to, So anyway, there's that population. And then there's what I consider to be, and I love this population, the not so normal faces of addiction, right? I am somebody who I can date back to the age of 4, somebody that has lived with a huge array of process, behavioral, and chemical addictions,
Mm,
right? So we're talking perfectionism, all or nothing, people pleasing, codependency.
yeah.
We're talking overachiever, fear of failure. We're talking eating disorders, disordered eating and food addiction, shopping addiction. We're talking
Stop talking about me.
alcoholism, right?
Yeah.
We're talking alcoholism, we're talking about prescription induced physiological addiction, which is what took me out 8 years ago. And so, again, I have a really long story, but guess what? I was highly functioning through all of it, raised 5 kids. I have 4 grandchildren. My husband, was, or is, I shouldn't say that, a very professional person where, so a lot of the things, but I was a highly functioning individual. And and so we have a lot of people out there, and anybody can raise their hand. Nobody can see you, so you can raise your hand. But
I raised my hand.
sitting on the couch in the
Right.
evening, you don't even know why, but you're drawn to
Yeah.
the bucket of brownies, or you go to the store and you're at the grocery store, you buy things, and on the way home you're just like, brr, and you don't even understand why. And that that emotional food addiction, or what, you go to Target and you go in for 3 things, but you always come out with 25. And then you get home and you're like, where am I going to hide this? I have clients that, or I have a client that literally has a back stock of Oreos so that she can replenish the Oreos in the cabinet, because the Oreos are her husband's cookies.
Mm,
Like, I mean, so there are all different varying levels of severity,
right.
and again, the people pleasing, that overbooking of the calendar, not knowing how to say no, never putting yourself first, just all these negative attachments and habits. And so I call this the not so normal faces of addiction. And this is my, I'd say, primary population, because a lot of those people that are coming out of treatment don't realize they need me until maybe their first slip. And
Okay.
then they come in, you know. But or they just get stuck. But anyway, so I that's that's my passion. That's just my walk. And
So, Tricia, how did you get involved in this work? This, as you mentioned, a very, particular niche, specialized niche. How did you come to this place? And why? Why?
uh why was for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Why was for me. And I mentioned my physiological addiction that was induced by a prescription. I part of my story is a lot of near-death experiences, having a hysterectomy at a really young age, and so being postmenopausal at a really young age. And so at some point in time or another, I developed generalized anxiety disorder with panic. Um, and at this point, I had all of my eating disorders and everything were pretty much in remission. My alcoholism was never in remission, but I was a very low level daily Coors Light drinker, like 3 to 6 beers a day. So, really my alcoholism was functioning, right? It was functioning. But so the anxiety with the panic set in, and I was chatting with my nurse practitioner. Loved her. She was very near and dear to our family. She had diagnosed our oldest daughter. She caught her leukemia, and anyway, she prescribed me Xanax, low dose Xanax, to help with that panic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a grown up. I mean, she knew I was a daily drinker. She knew I was very open about it. I never, hid my drinking until I did. But so we monitored it, but we kept it on board over the course of 5 years. So I didn't understand. All of a sudden, here I am. Fast forward 5 years, and I'm staying within the confines of my prescribed allotment, right? Like I never overused my prescription, and I kept my daily drinking, but they were synergistic. So it was just getting worse. So it became a physiological thing. Like it was a need from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed to keep homeostasis. And when I didn't, the shakes, et cetera. And so I was going to bed at night feeling my liver working. And I, was waking up dysfunctional, right? I was waking up nauseated, sometimes vomiting, and, just really having this negative physiological thing. And it wasn't okay with me. I'm a control freak, right? And so, I just kind of said to my husband, like, it's time, I need to quit drinking, and I can't do it on my own. I've been trying, and physiologically my body's not allowing me, and I don't know why. So, I researched and, took a couple months really cultivating a relationship with with the treatment facility that I went to. Did the medical supervised detox. And because my liver functions weren't right and my blood pressure wasn't right, and, there were other systemic issues. So I did the detox, did the 30-day stabilization, did it, a little bit of outpatient, but it really just wasn't my jam, nor was AA. I was never going to be somebody that was going to sit there and wallow and ruminate in my why I was here. Like that wasn't my deal. I mean, I did AA when, I had a couple DUIs early in life, so I felt like I had been there, done that. So I went to school. I had to learn what happened to me. And I started with the physiological effects of drugs and alcohol on the body, right? And then it just kind of spiraled from there. Went on to get my addiction treatment counseling. I've worked in every single level of addiction treatment. I've got my psych degree with a focus in addiction, process behavioral and chemical, as well as coaching as an effective psychological practice. And again, I went to an accredited coaching program that was very focused on what I wanted to do. And in there, as I'm learning all of these evidence-based practices and converting them into working in my life, being a very forward-moving, pick yourself up by the bootstraps kind of person, I created Building Milestones, which is my trademarked curriculum that is in Learn to Live Free, in Transform in 360, and in my Evolve program. Anyway, so I created that, and I worked in every level of treatment. I created programs for other facilities. I was a patient care director, and I really am very passionate about these populations.
Okay.
Because I see that they're underserved. But my why was because I saw myself, I felt like my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, my opinions, my beliefs were not valid. I didn't see value in myself, and it was just very derailing and heartbreaking. And
one of the things that I have noticed, there's this recurring theme, particularly with people who are in the field of helping other people, right? Is that the why comes from in this desire to help people comes from our own personal experiences, right? So, my thing about people doing work they love comes from a history of being in jobs that I hated, and working for people that I did not like. And so I certainly understand, where you're coming from. You go through an experience, and you don't want anyone else to have to go through that, right? And so while we can't help people avoid everything, we can help them move through what they're moving through because we've been there. And so what are some of the lessons that you learn through your process, through whether it's your education or your actual experience, that you find is most helpful for your clients and the populations that you serve?
I love that question. I really love that question because I think it's really important to accentuate, at least for me and what I do, that I don't just coach people because I was able to turn my life around. I don't just coach people because I think the way that I did things is great. I coach people, again, evidence-based practices that have been converted to a coaching model in I teach people the system and the processes in a specific order because they build on each other, but I teach them all along the way how to add, edit, delete, make it their own, and work inside their life. Because what we find with all these self-help and everything else, right? Like, oh, why does Tony Robbins work for this person and not for me? We're all trying to fit our lives into the method or modality of whatever guru, right? I know, because I lived it. So once I figured out that when I incorporated the method of the guru into my life,
Right.
Like, and add, edited, and deleted until it worked in my benefit, not trying to be somebody else or something else or do it, their way and wonder why I'm not getting the same results. It's just like a diet. Like my diet, it might not work for you, right? Like you might starve to death if you ate my diet, but I have gastroparesis. So, we have totally different needs. So anyway, that's the theory behind this. But so the things that my clients get the most out of, one is the education as to what a truly balanced life is and how to define the categories for themselves, right? Because we open a book and we see what they say, but you know what? My spirituality looks completely different to me than it does to you, right? Like
absolutely.
And my health needs are different, and recreation is different for me, and it's anyway. So we have that. Then we also learn the art of pause and responding versus reacting. So this is slowing down that impulsive, knee-jerk, reactive way that we live our lives. If it's bright and shiny, we got to have it. We speak without even thinking about our words. Everything's autopilot. I mean, we live in a society that if you get a text message, you have to like instantly reply. Wow, we can't live if somebody doesn't give me the feedback I need like right now, right? Like a post. We were talking about this earlier. If we put a post out there and we don't all of a sudden see like all the thumbs up and the hearts and get, blah, like why do we need that instantly? Why, anyway, so we learn this. And then from there, my favorite piece, because we also have emotion regulation, we have distress tolerance, self-soothing tactics, really what we're cultivating is a completely unique and elevated level of emotional intelligence,
Yes, yes.
all focused on ourselves, right? But the locus of control theory is life changing. It's pivotal when you know how to add, edit, delete, and put it into your life and see and observe and be able to go, right? Because if you're driving down the freeway and somebody's tailgating you, what do you want to do? I'm born and raised California, right? Driving on Southern California, LA traffic, Orange County traffic. What do we want to do? Plus, I'm German, Irish, Scottish, Sicilian, Taurus, born on the cusp of Gemini.
I imagine what you want to do then.
I run hot. So, my MO was I'm tapping the brakes. You want to ride my butt, man? I'll show you my bumper, right? And then when you go to pass me, it might look like some explicitory, remarks and hand gestures or whatever. So I taught myself this whole control system driving to and from school because it was a 100-mile round trip for me. And, so I learned what those external locuses of control are, like where every single place I was giving my power away, my peace away, my clarity away, my content, my motivation, we give it away to things outside of ourselves. So anybody that's constantly on a diet, anybody that's constantly up in their workout regimen, or just anything like, I need this, these I was a shoe hoarder. So, these shoes speak to me. I got to have them. They're going to make me feel so complete. All of these things, that's all an external locus of control. It's all an external drive. And we're just hoping that one external something is going to fix us. So that bottle of alcohol is never going to fix you. Alcohol should never have a purpose or a meaning in your life. And because think about it. If you're trying to have more fun with it, that makes no sense. It's a depressant. Hello.
Right.
Anyway, I could go on for hours, but these are the things we learn. And so we learn how to become an active listener. We learn how to just really slow down, get to know ourselves. And it depends on which level we're in, and we learn how to make this lifelong manageable and maintainable lifestyle that we own. It's how we want to see ourselves in our environment, but it's also how we want our environment to experience us.
Yeah. You said a couple of really good things and things that resonate with how I'm navigating my life, how I am working with my clients, helping them to navigate their lives. But the one that really stuck out to me is this taking things that we learn elsewhere and customizing it for ourselves, and really recognizing that you can model other people, right? But you can't be other people. And so because you don't have all the variables that they had, you can do the exact same thing, and it may not turn out the exact same way. Like you said, my health needs are different than yours, my spirituality, my mindset, all of those are variables. You can take the general principles, right? But you have to customize them for yourselves, which means there's some trial and error in there.
100%.
Right? And so taking that and using that is really important. And then this concept you have about being able to respond and not react, and how important that is in so many areas of our lives. And so are those lessons that, and you've got such a broad academic background, are those lessons that you feel were more academic based, or are those more of your maybe observations or personal experience?
Again, it's all eclectic. It's my own personal experience mixed with evidence-based practice in a fashion that, I use my curriculum different than my clients do. In fact, I'll be honest, I'm 8 years in and I still get up and listen to it. Like if I don't know, I'd be lost without all my clients because it keeps me engaged and on my toes. But it's all about so let me give an illustration. So boundaries in my world are different than boundaries in mainstream USA. So those in my world are limits and limitations. So take whatever you think about boundaries and call that limits and limitations just here for a second. But if we have a boundary system that works like a filtration system and it's protecting us temporarily, right? Emotionally, internally, externally, and physically, right? So if we have these boundaries, if you have goats on your property, you don't just keep them in one spot. You have to know how to effectively move them from this location to that location. Okay. So when I'm talking about being able to be, responsive instead of reactive and be able to, stay in an internal locus of control and know, what those emotional needs are in that time and space, you have to be able to be bendable, pliable, flexible with wherever you are. Because this is the problem. This is why most people approach the world in the stance of a judger. I approach everything in the stance of a learner. And because this is crucial. So if I take my boundary system with me wherever I go, it allows me to filter things in a way that I don't take things personally. I only take in what is for me, right? Like I can leave anything out there that belongs to them. That's theirs. I have the autonomy to utilize the power of inquiry, right? Like, wow, help me understand. Let me make sure I'm clear before I even give you what my thoughts, feelings, emotions, opinions, and beliefs are on the topic. And in fact, before I even do that, I'm going to ask you if you even care to hear. Because otherwise I'm wasting my breath, I'm wasting my energy, I'm giving my power away. I'm opening myself up to unneeded ridicule and judgment. And so I have to be willing and able to control my moments by being aware and observing effectively. So effectively anticipating, effectively planning, effectively, filtering, knowing what those limits and limitations need to be. Like I know who I would never have a political conversation with. I know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I love to get on and watch Erica Cobb because like I love what she has to say all the time, whether I agree with her 100% or not, but I just love her approach. And like, you can just get in there and kind of do this and there's, it's okay. Anyway, I don't know her personally. Her energy revs me up. But so we have to have this filtration system that belongs to us, and where I can illustrate how to create that. Like ultimately you have to be able to visualize it yourself. You have to know how to say, this is how I need to bring it with me. We have to know how to move people in our lives, right? So we have our inner nucleus circle of people, but that doesn't mean they stay in that nucleus all the time. There could be topics, situations, and environments that they need to be in the outside circle or even
absolutely.
Right. So we have to be more flexible and pliable in our life because there's so much rigidity that this is why people are breaking, they're snapping, they're shooting, they're whatever is going on. They're in the stance of a judger and they can't see past the end of their nose and can't believe that there may be alternative views. And that, hey, guess what? If I have the autonomy to think, feel, and believe what I think, feel, and believe, why doesn't everybody in the world have the autonomy to think, feel, and believe? Right.
We could talk about this all day.
I know. I'm sorry. I told you.
No. It's a topic that I love. What you're saying resonates with me. I love this learner, not a judger, right? And just being curious. And that's the whole point of this is we have to approach life with more curiosity and inquiry and being heart-centered. But what I'm thinking is that we're going to have this conversation and go into more depth on a different show. But I'm thinking life lemons and lemon drops. So for those of you who are here and listening to Love Your Work, I've got another platform for you, for us to go deeper in this conversation with Tricia. But I want to talk, go back a little bit. I want to, getting back to the theme of Love Your Work, I want to go back in time, do a little walk down memory lane. And this obviously was not the line of work that you were thinking of your whole life, right? Because you had some life experiences that put you on the path for this. So let's start with, what was the very first job that you had, maybe as a teenager, that wasn't a babysitting job, or maybe in
Yeah, I've been out on my own for some time. I had so my first job, I was 14 and I was a manager of a sub sandwich shop.
Okay.
And I also did work at a daycare center. And then after that, I just had a series of, on again, off again jobs. I'm a very young mother. My story, again, this will be more for the lemon drop, but anyway, health reasons, yada, yada, whatever, right? Like, so I'm a super young mom. I had my son 2 months after I turned 17. It was on purpose and purposeful. But again, that's more of that conversation. But anyway, fast forward, at 19, I went into the printing and marketing industry. I loved it. I stayed in it for a really long time. When I'm talking about printing and marketing, like, I was scheduling the press checks, I was doing the press checks, driving the forklift, scheduling the pressmen, and, the whole 9 yards. And then I shifted into a larger company and kind of a different type of a role, but I really always wanted to get to plant manager. And as a young female in a man's industry, like, remember, I started at 19 and I left the industry at 20, I want to say 26. So at 26, like, I was never going to get where I wanted to go. And so I left, but it's also when I met my husband.
Okay.
So I met my husband. We have 5 children together, and so I did real estate, insurance, mortgage, staging, and that whole 9 yards. And I weaved in and out of it, off and on, depending upon our children's needs, level of need for my care.
Right.
Because again, he was an executive, and we have an adult child now who's a survivor of adolescent leukemia. And our other daughter gave us a run for the money. So I'd say the only other real solid professions, those were them, right? So my first job was at age 14, managing a sub shop.
So at 14 is pretty young, right? And a lot of people don't have that opportunity. What were some of the lessons that you learned working in a sandwich shop, right? About people or about yourself?
I think in retrospect, I can look back and see that I've always been, on the inside, someone that will go the extra mile to help somebody feel better, right? And so you get those disgruntled people that come in, or you want to make them a really good sandwich, you want them to be happy, you want to bring them pleasure, right? You want to give them joy.
Yeah.
And I remember, and I was only supposed to be a part-time employee, but the owners saw my capability of being able to manage it, so they would take off, and which of course led to me not attending school a lot of the time. But I just learned, team player, being a team player, being able to speak up, hold on to your autonomy. I also learned something that, which was ultimately a reason to leave, was that just because they're your boss, just because they're your superior, doesn't mean that you have to tolerate inappropriate behavior.
Right. That is such a good lesson. And then I'm curious in, the plant job, my very first job that wasn't a babysitting job or something that family got me actually was in a printing plant.
Oh,
And I started by assembling I don't think they use them anymore, but I assembled the folders that doctors and dentists use, right? And we
okay.
had this
Well,
machine.
we made those. We made them, you put them together.
Exactly, exactly. So we have that in common. But in that environment, and I was the only woman who worked there, right? It was a plant full of men, and never anything inappropriate or anything happened like that. And honestly, I hadn't even really thought about being the only woman until this conversation. It just was, right?
Mhm.
That's the way it was. But when you realized that you weren't going to have the career that you thought that you wanted there, notwithstanding the fact that those things that we don't get direct us to things that are better for us, what did you take in maybe the moment that you made that realization that you're like, okay, so I actually need to walk away from this?
Well, I have to kind of add on what the true purpose for, or actually, I guess they were synergistic, but this is that happening for me at a time in my life where physical deterioration was happening.
Mm, mm,
So this is a period for me that looks like um, daily visits to the ER to get control over hives that are all over for no explainable reason. This is, chronic endometriosis, chronic internal cysts that were rupturing, and just that whole near death
mm,
experience stuff that I was explaining, right? Which led to a very early menopause, a very early hysterectomy, all prior to the age of 30. So so it was a lot of stress, a lot of physical health issues, and it just was really not feeding it. And because I wasn't going to get where I was going to, and it was just that whole decision making process between
yeah.
my husband and I that you know it's probably adding more harm to my physical functioning as well as my emotional functioning, right? Like it was so derailing for me, having been, if we had gone through my story of being a 4-year-old that was reading, writing, doing arithmetic and playing chess at 4, and classical piano and competitively swimming by the time they were 6. If we went back to that, again, there's that whole perfectionism, and
Right.
I wasn't going to make it. So those control needs were not being filled, and it was psychologically derailing for me. So, which leads to that consistent, lifelong intrigue into human psychology.
Okay. You've got such an interesting story, and I'm looking forward to being able to unpack this a little more in another forum. But I wanted to ask you, as we wrap up here, what is like, and you've shared so many good nuggets here, but what is like your one overarching sort of philosophy about navigating the world of work that helps you stay focused, right? And that helps you to really love what you're doing.
This is pretty much what I live by. I believe that we do not need anything outside of ourselves to bring us peace, joy, comfort, relief, whatever. And my mantra every day, all day is, this is my life too. It gets to look, feel, be however I want it to. Right? So I live for myself first without feeling guilty, selfish, punished, or restricted. And let me tell you, it's been life changing. I
Yeah.
have better relationships. I now realize where unconditional positive regard resides in my life with others, for others. And without that unconditional positive regard, it's like a constant struggle.
Yeah.
So again, add, edit, delete, man.
I love that. I love that.
Anytime you want to, you want to talk about that further, I do have a whole talk that I do around add, edit, delete to teach people how to do it. So I'd be happy to, chat with you.
We're gonna have to have that conversation. Love that. I love that. And going back to, I think, self-awareness, the locus of control, all of these things, right? That we get to choose, we get to decide. It's the only life we have. It's, and we get to decide what it looks like, what it feels like, what it tastes like, how we're spending our time. And too often we feel like we're stuck in places and jobs and work that is not working for us, that's not serving us, and it's creating other issues in our lives. And it doesn't have to be that way. So, Tricia, thank you so much for stopping by. I love your work, for having this conversation. We're absolutely going to have you on Lemon Drops. And for those of you who don't know about Lemon Drops, Life, Lemons, and Lemon Drops, you can find that on Apple Podcasts. We're going to have Tricia on as a guest and dig deeper into her story and how she's moved through all of this. But for now, we want to wish you a fabulous day. Take control of it. Take control of your life. Take control of your decisions. Take control of your work. Love what you do just because you get to do it. How's that? How's that? So have a great rest of your day. And Tricia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.